بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم وتتعلم وتعليم والذكر والتذكير ونفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تماسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والضلال والاتباع والهدى ومدد الجلد وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى
مع لطف وعافية
برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب السوء الهني وهدي اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب السوء الهني وهدي اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب السوء الهني وهدي صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين آمين. Alright, Alhamdulillah. We finished the previous hadith kan about the people who believe who read the Quran and don't read the Quran. Did I read through the entire thing?
You give
Did I finish in the hadith? I know we read through the hadith, but did I finish going through all the explanation?
faedah
Let me just read it lah.
misalnya
Okay. So the purpose of presenting this example is to demonstrate the high rank of a believer and the loftiness of his deeds. Explanation. Okay. So we went through the hadith itself lah.
Yes.
Alright. Let's read the hadith for the benefit of the hadith. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. روى أبو داود أن أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل المؤمن الذي يقرأ القرآن مثل أترجة ريحها طيب وطعمها طيب ومثل المؤمن الذي لا يقرأ القرآن كمثل التمرة طعمها طيب ولا ريح لها ومثل الفاجر الذي يقرأ القرآن كمثل الريحانة ريحها طيب وطعمها مر ومثل الفاجر الذي لا يقرأ القرآن كمثل الحنظلة طعمها مر ولا ريح لها ومثل الجليس الصالح كمثل صاحب المسك إن لم يصبك منه شيء أصابك من ريحه ومثل جليس السوء كصاحب الكير إن لم يصبك من سواده أصابك من دخانه. Abu Dawud narrates an authority of Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu who said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the similitude of a believer who recites the Quran is like the citron fruit. A citron, a fruit which looks like a lemon with a thick aromatic peel. Its fragrance is beautiful and its taste is good. And the similitude of a believer who does not recite the Quran is like a date. It tastes good, but it has no fragrance. The similitude of a sinner who recites the Quran is like a basil. It has a beautiful fragrance, but its taste is bitter. The similitude of a sinner who does not recite the Quran is like a colocynth. It's also known as the bitter apple. It tastes bitter and has no fragrance. The similitude of a righteous companion is like a perfumer. If you do not get any perfume from him, you will get some fragrance by being with him. The similitude of an evil companion is like a person who tends to the bellows. If some of his soot does not get onto you, his smoke will get onto you. The purpose of presenting this example is to demonstrate the high rank of a believer and the loftiness of his deeds, and to expose the despicable level of a sinner and the baseness of his deeds. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam divided into 4 categories, right? So you see from this hadith, right, very clearly Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam divided human beings into 4 categories, right? A believer who recites the Quran. Recites the Quran has several meanings. Right, the first is that they recite recitation lah, a physical recitation of the Quran. Okay, and that's the first. The second is that they study the Quran. Those who recite the Quran, that means those who study. It means those who seek knowledge. Right? That is the second interpretation of what it means by reciting the Quran. Right? So there is one whereby it is reciting, and there's another one whereby it's reciting and learning the Quran. Which is why that this person will be the best of people. Right? Because they are believers and they study the Quran. Right? In another hadith, Rasulullah SAW says that the best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. And by that we know who are the best of believers. Those who learn the Quran and they teach the Quran. It's the best of amal, the best deeds. And in fact today, in our time, when it comes to da'wah, a lot of ulama say you don't have to go further than the Quran. And in fact you should not. You should not go into other things while you have not studied the Quran with the people. Right? So if people really want to get their da'wah in shape, right, or to really help the community, right, then there is no way except through the Quran. Right, because that is the guidance, and then thereafter through the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if people were to neglect the Quran and the hadith and they try to do the da'wah in any other way, then they are just fooling themselves. Basically, they just flat out, to be frank, they are just fooling themselves. Trying to do da'wah without reference to Quran and to hadith of Rasulullah, because guidance is Quran, guidance is hadith. Right. So the four categories that some divided people into are, first and foremost, believers who read the Quran and believers who do not read the Quran. Right? And then the other two will be disbelievers, or not disbelievers, fajr, sinners. Sinners who read the Quran and sinners who do not read the Quran. You have four categories of people. Right? So the first one, believers, those who are believers and who recite the Quran, meaning they learn the Quran. They are the best of people, because they benefit themselves and they will benefit others. So reciting the Quran doesn't just mean that you just read it without knowing what it means. Because the whole point of the Quran being sent down to human beings is that it will be a guidance to mankind. That is the entire point of the Quran. That is the role of the Quran. That is the purpose of the Quran, to be a guidance. So we have completely disregarded, or ignored the very points of the Quran. If we do not add to our recitation the learning of the Quran. Right? So while recitation itself is a high and lofty thing to do daily with the Quran, more than that we should do, we should not neglect, is to learn the Quran. So both should be done. So if anybody were to ask, should I focus on recitation or should I focus on learning the Quran? You ask any of the ulama, they will all say both. You can't, you're not supposed to leave one and do the other. It's not an either or. It's not an either or situation. It's an and situation. Right? So you can't say, I only have time to either read or study. If you only have time to either read or study, then you're not taking your life seriously. Right? So you must find time to read and you must find time to study. Right? The Quran. I mean, if Allah gives us 24 hours in a day, you should be finding time to read the Quran and study the Quran. You should be finding time. You shouldn't be like, I have no time. No. I mean, that is basically you're deceiving yourself. Right? So that's why the ulama, I've never heard any of the serious ulama, whoever, if anyone asks that kind of question, that they will say do this and not that, or focus more on this and not that. They actually will not say that. They will say both. You must do both. And don't give me the excuse that you have no time. Don't give the excuse. You have time. Go and find your time. So the first group of people Rasulullah mentioned are the believers who recite the Quran, meaning those who learn the Quran. They are the best of people because they benefit themselves and they benefit other people. Second one, those who are believers but do not recite the Quran. There is still goodness in them, as Rasulullah gave them the likeness of a date. They are like a date fruit, whereby there is no fragrance from them, meaning other people are not benefiting from them, right? But they have goodness inside of them. It means they are sweet and they are good inside of them. So they are like the date fruit. So those who are believers but do not recite the Quran, they are lower in the rank than the first category. Antuk. Then, sini balik kat sini. Kalau dah masih lek tak? Kalau dah masih lek. Put the pillow for Afra come.
Carry.
It's not well enough for today. Saya tengah manja. Tengah manja means nak tidur. hoping that I could bring my stick. I'm not the right person. Alright.
That's why she came to you.
Alright, so number 2, right, those who are believers but don't recite the Quran, they are like the date fruit, whereby there is goodness in them. Right? However, they are not spreading to other people. I mean, they are not studying the religion, so therefore they are not able to spread to other people. Right? But they have goodness in them. Right? They have sweetness in them like a date fruit. Right, so they are lower in rank than the first category. However, both categories are fortunate because they are both believers. So they are both beneficial in their own ways. The third category is the one who are the hypocrites. They are sinners, but they recite the Quran. Sinners, but they recite the Quran. So these people, right, they are the likeness of a basil, whereby they have a good fragrance to them, but the taste is bitter. Right, so while they learn the Quran and they are able to benefit others, they would be. It's not impossible that they benefit others. It's definitely possible they benefit others, and there will be plenty of these people around. Especially towards the end of time, right, majority of people will be beneficial to other people, but they themselves will not benefit themselves. But they benefit other people. This is a sign of the end of time. So by most scholars will fall into this category. Wa'iyahzubillah, may Allah protect us from this. Right? But most scholars fall into this category whereby they will benefit other people, but they themselves will not benefit, right, from their own knowledge. And they are the hypocrites. And the fourth one are those who have neither Quran nor Iman. So they are sinners, right, and they don't read the Quran, so they are not benefit to other people nor to themselves. They are wretched. So they are like the bitter apple. I'm not sure what's the bitter apple. I think it's some sort of water plant. Alright. So here Rasulullah gives us an analogy. Right? So a similitude. Right? Similitude whereby he compares fruits and human beings for us to understand. Right? So with a fragrance, the fruit, gives out a fragrance that shows that it is benefiting those who are around it. It having a good taste in itself, a sweet taste in itself, shows that it possesses goodness in itself. Right. So Iman and the Quran are both sources of light, which Allah Subhanahu wa Taala places in the heart of whom He wills. Right. Both these are the basis of every good in this world. Right. Every good goes back to the Quran and Iman. Right. So that's why we should never ever neglect our Quran ever. Right. So because all of goodness goes back to Quran and it goes back to Iman. Right. In this world and hereafter, the knowledge of both is the best and the most virtuous of knowledge. In fact, there is no knowledge that can really benefit a person besides the knowledge of these, Iman and Quran. Right, so it's a very strong statement by Syekh Abu Fadl Bagoda. Right, and every real scholar will say that. If you had any real sheikh, real ulama, real scholar, they will always say, go back to the Quran, go back to the Quran. There is nothing for you if you are going to look elsewhere besides the Quran. You don't fool yourself and don't deceive yourself. Is the Quran or the Hadith that you can look at. This prophetic parable contains a profound incentive to do good and a forbidding warning to abstain from evil. This has been expressed in a manner to facilitate easy assimilation by the audience. It also instructs one to choose the companionship of the righteous and the ulama, and to frequent their gatherings because it is of benefit to this world and hereafter. It also warns against the company of evil ones and flagrant sinners, right? Flagrant sinners, that means boastful sinners, or open sinners, right? Al-Fujjar, right? The Fajr, right? That means the one who is they're blatantly sinning, right? So the last part of the hadith, the Rasul says that to keep the company, right, of a good person is like to sit with a perfumer, right? So you will, even if you don't buy anything from them or you don't gift anything to you, you will still benefit by you sitting in their presence, and you will enjoy the perfume, right? And then to keep the company of an evil person is the company of a blacksmith, right? So blacksmith, either he will burn your clothing, right, or some soot will fall onto you, right? Or you have to just withstand the smell, right? The smoke that comes from him, right? So there is always a harm, right, in keeping company of people of wretchedness. And this means people who are openly sinning. And we know that it is even more harm, right, to actually sit with people while they are openly sinning. And it's not to say that you don't, you don't have relationship or you don't have friendship with people who are sinners. You do, right? But in a way whereby, first and foremost, in environments that are neutral, right? Or positive. Right? Positive environments or neutral environments. You don't go into a negative environment with the intention to influence. You don't actually do that, because in doing so, you are placing yourself at risk, right, to be influenced by them, right? So it's always, if you want to influence someone, either you bring them to a neutral environment, like you bring them out for lunch, for dinner, for coffee, for tea, that kind of thing, and you bond with them, you make friends with them, right? Or you bring them to a positive environment. A positive environment, like a class, a masjid, whatsoever lah, a positive environment, events, good event whatsoever. But if you want to influence someone, never go into a negative environment. So don't think that going into a club, you were able to influence them, or going for a party, whereby there's a lot of sins going on, you influence them, or whatever lah. Never expose, no matter how strong you think your iman is, never expose yourself to these kind of situations. Rather bring them into your environment, and there is higher chance of them being influenced than you being influenced, because it is said by the ulama that negative influence is far stronger than positive influence. It is a fact. Negative influence is far stronger than positive influence, which is why if you want to positively influence someone, you need to bring them all the way into your environment. You can't, or into a neutral environment. You can't jump into their environment, because you will be influenced by them instead. Alright, so that's why the hadith is very clear. To keep the companionship of a good person, or to keep the companionship of an evil person. With evil people, nonetheless, even if you don't commit the sin, you become okay with the sin. You actually become numb, towards sin. You don't feel anything about it anymore. You're okay with it. You don't even say istighfar anymore. When you see this kind of things, because you're so used to it. And that is the danger of doing that. And that is also the danger of of course, environment includes the media. The media includes environment, So if someone keeps watching stuff on TV, that is that goes around sin, zina and whatsoever, they become desensitized, and that has happened to a lot of our Muslims. But they see blatant sin on TV, just because you're not there doesn't mean that you're free of it, If you're watching it, that means you're in the environment right now. You're watching the sin in the environment. Especially if people do it on purpose, it means you switch it on purpose, You want to watch it on purpose, All of these things will, it will cause the heart to be hardened, And then you won't feel the shame or the pain of sin anymore, But you will feel it is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine.
That day there's this kids movie, they want to say Happy Feet, the one with the penguin in it. So I think a lot of kids like to watch it. So that day I was watching it, and then they have sexual contents in there. Because of the mating season of the penguin. So the male penguin would say things lah, because they're talking penguins, right? So they would say things to attract. And everybody there is saying it's a child show. It's a child show. Not a child show. It's not. It's really bad. It's Happy Feet show.
I've never watched it before.
Have you watched it? Right, the Happy Feet, right?
Dah lama lah dia menonton, because I know it's a penguin cartoon.
A penguin cartoon. And then
That's how they
there's this part
disguise
where
it. They disguise it in that way.
Yeah.
They make it
But
cartoonish.
it's like that. You always have a cartoon, and then there's an adult scene.
There'll be an adult thing there,
Yeah,
inside.
it's
Because
always
if you see, of all things to say about penguins, you don't have to talk about their mating.
Yeah.
You can talk about everything else beside their mating. You can talk about them giving birth if you want lah, but you don't have to talk about the mating part.
You always have something.
Like they have this call, and then and then how the girls will crowd around that one male superior penguin, and then I don't know, it's bad. In the beginning it was quite okay. In the beginning it was about this one penguin who's ostracized by everybody else because he looks different and he does different things, and then you're not supposed to do that. So it sort of hit something. But later on it became, it's really bad. It's a bad movie. Yeah. It's Happy Feet. And it's something I feel all the time. The movie Happy Feet. So, okay lah.
I've never watched it.
Watch it. like this. I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
It's hard to censor. So I tell her like just no movies like no, I mean whatever that comes out in the cinema
just
now.
don't
I just
watch.
tell her like
Yeah.
because
It's really bad.
I don't know what is the content, and then like I don't want to like see the movie and then suddenly macam
Get shocked by
And that is what you see like a parent. I mean, like when you like they say there's always this subtle
yeah,
drawings.
the symbols, right?
They put subtle things into the drawings. You never seen before. Eh?
No.
They will literally draw something that is indecent and then make it into a character. So like they will literally draw. It's real. They will literally draw a cartoon character, but the original shape of it is an organ.
Organ.
Something.
It's vulgar. Very
Budak
vulgar.
organ.
Ah.
Yeah, and then they will draw eyes and nose and make it into a character.
What cartoon is this?
A lot, plenty. All over Disney, all over Warner Brothers, all
Like,
over.
I read a blog post on this. Like,
Yeah, actually ada banyak. They will draw really explicit things, like explicit, and make it into a character. So the very base shape of the thing is actually something explicit. It's so that is what you don't even know. That's what you don't even know. So what you know already, it freaks you out. About cartoon, right? Saying
You
how
watch Happy Feet before? I was
watched
so
Happy Feet.
distraught
Happy
by
Feet.
that show.
Happy Feet also teruk.
So it's like the way they do the mating season. I mean, penguins in general, I know, but then they don't talk and they don't talk it out. They don't talk it out. They don't like come here, baby. They don't do that.
Teruk.
Say. Yeah, anyway, it reminded
Yeah,
me of
because
that.
all of them. It is the corruption of children for
See,
generations.
the Mickey Mouse beat and all that, I heard Shamsa Yusof talking about it. Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah. But
It's
to see it and to recognize it yourself, to see
Yeah.
a movie and suddenly recognize, I panicked lah basically.
The Devil's Trap that lecture, I asked her to watch it because you know to
The Devil's Trap by Aisyah Hamzah, right?
Yeah, all the
Aisyah Hamzah, it's Malaysia kan, is it?
symbols, the cartoon, like, I wanted to know why.
Yeah. And you know, this kind of lectures, like this kind of Devil's Trap, Shamsa, he has a lot of lectures against media and against all this like popular culture. Like the thing about it is that people watch it, they hear all these lectures and everything, and they still do it. They still go back to their movie. They still go they watch. They agree with Shamsa, and then the next thing you know, they're into their blockbusters. Actually, plenty of people I know, they will hear the lecture and they're like, yeah, he's right. And the next thing you know, they're back into what they were doing from before. Like no effect, nothing. You're not affected. And for me, like after that, I was so turned off by all of these things. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, right, so that one is that counts as companionship, It counts. TV counts as companionship.
Yeah.
Right? It does count as companionship.
Companionship
Right?
is-
So when the some says stay away from evil companionship, right? People who are actually on the TV and they watch people committing all kinds of sins on the TV, you're keeping the company of sinners. You're actually keeping the company of sinners. Outright, you are. You're keeping the company of sinners, right? So so it's for like on people to imagine that whatever they're seeing on TV is happening right in front of them there and then. How many times you off the TV? I mean, if you can imagine that whatever scene you're seeing on TV is happening right in front of you physically, like would you sit there and watch? I mean, you wouldn't. Right? I mean, all these sitcoms and whatsoever, all kinds of scenes in there. Right? So they say it's equivalent. It's equivalent to it happening right in front of you, your eyes. Right?
The concern is become numb to it.
Yes,
You
become
see,
numb.
you
Become numb.
That's the part where you say
Become completely numb to it.
You see the scene.
That is a sin in Islam. To become numb towards sin is a sin in of itself.
But when you become numb and like don't see it as a sin at all, that is really
It's dangerous lah.
dangerous, right?
That's
That
why
one
it's sin
is
in and of
another-
itself. Right? The exposure to sin, the constant exposure to sin, even if you don't do it, it's really sinful. Right? And then this brings you to the disease of a hard heart. We should really macam teruk. Really, really bad. That's why Allah subhanahu in the Quran himself, He said that the Bani Israel were cursed on the tongue of Nabi Dawud and Nabi Isa. Why? Because they saw sin and they left it. They saw sin, they didn't try to stop it. So us, we're not even are we seeing sin, we are feeding ourselves with sin. In the sense that we are not even, not even like you're in a gathering and it happens. No, you actually on the TV, buy a ticket, go to the movies, like physically put in effort and money just to expose yourself to all kinds of sins. I mean, subhanallah, like the kind of what will be on the day of judgment, on all of these things. Because it is equivalent. It is equivalent. People think, no, I'm not committing the sin. No, you paying for it, going for it, watching it, sin. Same as you sitting there in front of them and watching them doing their zina or doing their whatever. Can you imagine? You used to put the idea in your head, they're in the same room as somebody committing a major sin. You like, what's it? Disgusting, right? But how many people, day in and day out, watch sitcoms and it's just in front of them? Right. It's not the same. Under companionship. Right. So people say, what's the dalil? Oh, plenty of dalil against the media. Plenty of dalil against the media. You just have to use your brain and you will see. Right? It's completely impermissible. روى البخاري ومسلم عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله تعالى عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم قال إن مثل ما بعثني الله به من الهدى والعلم كمثل الغيث الكثير أصاب أرضا فكانت منها طائفة طيبة نقية قبلت الماء فأنبتت الكلأ والعشب الكثير وكانت منها أجادب أمسكت الماء فنفع الله بها الناس فشربوا وسقوا وزرعوا وأصاب طائفة أخرى منها إنما هي قيعان لا تمسك ماء ولا تنبت كلأ فذلك مثل من فقه في دين الله ونفعه ما بعثني الله به فعلم وعلم ومثل من لم يرفع بذلك رأسا ولم يقبل هدى الله الذي أرسلت به. Another parable Rasulullah gives. We're going to parables. He's giving him. It's one of my most favorite hadiths, and it's a chapter in Sahih also. They cover this hadith. So from Bukhari and Muslim, who narrate on the authority of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, who said that Rasulullah said, "The similitude of the guidance and knowledge which Allah has sent me with is like that of abundant rain, which falls onto a land." So Rasulullah is like this rain. His guidance and his knowledge, the Quran, is like this rain. So you see, in a sense, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already sent the ni'mah. Allah has sent the rizki done. It's in the rain. But what does the land do with the rain? It depends on the land that it falls on. So it says here, right, a portion of this land which was good and pure, right, a portion of which was good and pure, it absorbed the water and thereby caused abundant trees and lush vegetation to grow. Right, so there's some land, right, that is able to absorb water and it benefits from the water in itself, becomes fertile, right, and then it causes vegetation to grow. Right, and Arafat will actually explain the entire parable later on. So I'm not going to explain it now because we're going to hear it directly from Rasulullah how he explains it himself. Right, and the other land, right, it held water. Right, so another portion was barren. So of the ones that were barren, there are two types. Right, the first type, right, is that it holds water. Right, so it's barren, it holds water. So Allah enabled people to benefit from it. They drank, irrigated their lands, and harvested. Right, so the first group of land, or the first land, was the one that could absorb the water, and from it plants grew. Right, so that one is very beneficial. The other type of land is hard land, but can hold the water. So because it can hold the water, others can benefit from it. Because land is hard, but it can hold water. So it doesn't go all the way in, but it's held by the land. So others can actually benefit from it and irrigate and drink from the water, but it doesn't really grow plants. It just holds the water. Right? And another portion, right, and the rain fell on another portion of land which was plain and level. This land neither holds any water, nor does it allow any vegetation to grow. This is the similitude of the one who has an understanding of the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and benefits from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent me with. He acquires knowledge and conveys it to others. And the other is like the similitude of the one who does not pay any heed to it and does not accept the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with which I have been sent. Right, so you see, he gives, so the blame is not on the rain. The rain is not to be blamed. The rain came, and the rain came in abundance, and the rain came with a lot of goodness. The one that is to be blamed is the land on which the rain fell. So these lands are basically different hearts. So some hearts absorb the rain, the guidance from Rasulullah, and it shows the effect in its own self. So it is guided, and it guides others. So it grows its plantations, the plants and the trees and the shrubs, grows from it. So others will benefit from it. There are those like the land that does not grow, but it holds the water. So this one is the likeness of the one who is able to hold the guidance and to hold the knowledge, but he himself does not benefit from it, but others will benefit from him. So the water is not absorbed by him, but he holds it. He holds it for other people to drink from. And the second group, that means the one who learn, memorize, and then throw it out. Other people will benefit from him, but he himself does not benefit from his own knowledge. And the last one is that the one who does not hold anything whatsoever. He's useless, a useless land. So the rain goes through him, falls onto him, it goes right through him. So he does not benefit from it, and nobody else will benefit from it because he does not hold knowledge, nor does he benefit from his own knowledge. So this is the example, the similitude that Rasul gave about water, about rain that fell onto land. So rain that fell onto land, in a way whereby the first type, the land benefits and people on land benefit. Second type, the land does not benefit, people around the land or on the land benefits. Last type, no benefit in any way. The rain just goes right through the person. So it's mashallah, is the way Rasulullah gives similitudes. So Qurtubi and others mentioned Rasulullah presents a similitude of the religion with which he was sent, with that of rain which comes to people at a time when they are in need of it. So it was said that this hadith was said in a time whereby people were in need of rain. So and they know of land that are useless when it comes to rain. Rain can fall on this land in abundance, but the land is so useless, the rain goes right through the land. And people know they cannot benefit from the rain that falls in this kind of land. Because there are types of sand in the desert, whereby the rain goes right through. And there are those that can actually hold on to the rain and they become moist and fertile. And there are those that they will remain hard, but they will hold the rain. And like that, they will hold the rain. So here it says here, so this was the condition of the people before the commissioning of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a messenger. So as how they understood, drought. And then waiting for rain to come, that is exactly their situation before the coming of Rasulullah. They were all in drought, Drought of what? Drought of guidance. They are starving or they are in thirst for guidance, and they are dying. Their souls are dying. So Rasulullah came like the rain cloud, to bring guidance, and to save them from whatever they are in. So just as rain gives life to a dead land, the teachings of Islam give life to a dead heart. Which I mentioned, the land refers to heart. The parable of land is like that of a heart. He then compared those who heard him to various portions of a land on which rain falls. So now you see how the parable works. So now, mashallah, parables are really interesting, powerful. His parables are one thing so ingenious. And so simple, but so ingenious, and it makes you understand things immediately, and it also makes learning more interesting. Parables and examples makes learning more interesting. So if you want to teach a concept, especially an adab and akhlaq, it is always nice to put in a story or a parable. So the Quran is filled with stories and parables, so that the human beings will not get bored. Because if it's just maw'idah, if it's just warning the whole Quran. There's warnings, reminders. The human being in our nature, we will after a while we get hard to it. It gets we get numb towards it and we get bored of it. Allah knows this is the state of the human being. So Allah throws in a story here and there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throws in a parable here and there to make them think. A parable makes people think, and stories pull their attention. Pull your attention to the story and see the example in the story. Right? So it's one of the strongest ways of teaching, to give parable and to give stories, right? And from there, people will learn the lesson better. Right? So obviously how it says here, right? So among them is a person who has knowledge, practices on it, and conveys it to others. He is like a good piece of land which absorbs water, benefits itself, causes vegetation to grow, and thus benefits others from it. There's the first group of people, right, who they benefit others and they themselves are benefited, right, and they are called the fertile type of land. Then there is a person who has acquired knowledge appropriate to his time, but does not act on its optional aspects or does not fully comprehend what he has acquired. Right, so he has gotten the water, but he does not know how to apply it, right, or he does not apply it. So his likeness, so however he conveys it to others. So he is at the land in which water remains, right, the water is able to be caught in this land, right, and the people are able to benefit from it. Right, this person is referred to in the following statement of Rasulullah, whereby he says, "May Allah make that person flourish who hears my speech and memorizes it, and then conveys it as he has heard it. Many a person who has acquired knowledge is not fully knowledgeable himself, and many a person who has acquired knowledge may very likely convey it to someone who is more knowledgeable than him." Right, so it can happen in the ummah. It can happen, right? It can happen. It can happen in a non-blameworthy way, whereby the knowledge that they acquire, they can't possibly understand it. Like for example, the Sahaba, when they acquire knowledge about the end of times, Rasulullah will tell them hadith about the end of times, and a lot of which the Sahaba they don't know what it's talking about, and they're not so sure exactly what is meant by the hadith. But what they do, they narrate the hadith as it is. They don't at all say anything about what they think it means, right? But they just narrate it as it is, right? In the hope that in the future there will be people who will hear this hadith and they know exactly what it means, right? And it has happened, right? In our time it has happened. The Sahaba will narrate the hadith and they will just narrate it, right, like that, right? Not giving any interpretation of the hadith, right? And then when it comes to our time, our scholars, right, they interpreted it in the way whereby it becomes obvious in our time. When we mentioned about Habib Abu Bakr Adani, right, how he interpreted the hadith of Jibril, right, about the signs of the end of times, right, and when he was asked him, why did the previous scholars not see it, then he said that it's because in our time it is clear and apparent and it's blatant, whereas in previous times it was not clear the meaning of this hadith, but now it's very clear, right, what the hadith actually means. Right, so there are many hadiths like that. Right, it's all, and he actually compiles the hadith in some of his books. Right, the hadith of the end of times, whereby the Sahaba will just narrate it, right, Allahu A'lam what it means, right. And in our time, we understand what the hadith actually mean. Like for example, there's a hadith that says at the end of time, metal will speak. So metal will speak. The thing the Sahaba heard from Rasulullah, they just narrate it, whether or not they understand it. Right? And one of the hadiths that Shaykh Hamza actually shared, right, in this hadith, 40 hadiths Imam Nawawi, one of them he shared is the hadith of the creation of man. Right, where Ibn Mas'ud narrates that the man is 40 days as a fluid, 40 days as a clot of blood, 40 days as a lump of flesh, right? And then the angel comes, right? And then blows in the ruh and writes down for him 4 matters, right, for this person. So, but Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud, at the beginning of the hadith, he says that Rasulullah told me, and he is the most trustworthy and the most truthful, right? What? Right? So, and some of the Shamsa actually comments, and he says that, some of the scholars, they do say that Ibn Mas'ud did not fully understand this first part about the creation of man, but he narrated it as it was. Whatever was narrated to him, he narrated 40. Right, you are this, you are this, you are this. Right, however you want to understand it, understand. Right, but he basically is from Rasulullah, therefore it is true. So the Sahaba did that, and the Sahaba they would hear hadith of Rasulullah, and some of the hadiths they would not comprehend, but they would narrate. They would narrate it nonetheless. Right, and that is the likeness of the one who holds water, right, and then they pass on the water, right, to somebody else, right. Of course, the other example is the one who actually learns something but does not practice on it. This doesn't make them convey nothing, It's as if they did not even attend the majlis. It goes right through them. So such a person is like a level of, or like a level, right, or mashi land, like a level or mashi land, which does not absorb water and cause destruction to other lands, right? Lands whereby the water just goes right through. In this similitude, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, they can play if you just you getting excited. Why you throw there? Then give them a look. Okay, never mind. Alright, mention the first two praiseworthy categories together because from them benefit is derived, right? On the other hand, he mentioned the third praiseworthy category on its own because there is no benefit and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Right, so this is the similitude of those who attain knowledge or those who are exposed to knowledge, right? Either they attain it and they act on it, or they don't attain it at all, or they attain it and they pass it on without acting on it. The first category of people are those who narrate a hadith, have intelligence, invite others, and practice on what they have learnt. The second category are those who narrate, are custodians of knowledge, practice on it, but have limited intelligence. That could be another explanation. Limited intelligence means they don't really understand themselves, what it means. But they act on what they know, and they are sincere, and they narrate what they know. Perhaps there will be other scholars later on who will understand it better. And we know this because of the great scholars that came thereafter. Like Imam Ghazali is the greatest of scholars, and he took from many people. He learned hadith from many people, across the Islamic empire. So it is definitely the case whereby some of those whom he learned from he was better than them, right, in understanding the hadith that he actually took from them. It could be the case, right? So I mean, it's definitely the case because Imam Ghazali is of the best of the scholars of the Islamic Ummah, right? So it's definitely possible, right?
So the second group of people, right, the fact that they benefit others,
they get
pahala?
They get reward. They get rewarded for spreading benefit or spreading knowledge. They get rewarded. They do, right? Especially if they are not able to act on it due to their limitations in understanding, right, or limitations that is beyond their control, right? Like their jobs or their family situation or whatsoever, right? So limitations is beyond their control, right? Or their basically lack of understanding. However, if they abandon the acting on the hadith because of laziness, right, or just refusing to do so, right, then that one can be blameworthy on them, right? However, if they are spreading the knowledge sincerely, then inshallah they get rewarded for those who act on it, because it's a hadith that the one who points to goodness will be rewarded as the one who does it, right? So inshallah there will be that. Of course, if they in them spreading hadith and them not acting on it and then being proud of what they spread, right? So when they spread hadith and then people say, oh mashallah, they're so knowledgeable, they're so this, so that, and you get arrogant and then you begin learning hadith just for the sake of spreading it. That one is a different situation altogether. That one is more of like you're learning it just to exert yourself, just to aggrandize yourself. It's a different story altogether.
But can also cause benefit to other people.
But for them, it can cause benefit to it can benefit other people, but they could be punished for it because they're doing all of it just to show off. So it does boil down. It goes back down to their intention. Yeah, why are they doing it? So it could be that they're saying all these things and spreading to other people in the sense they're trying to understand it. They're hoping someone else explains it to them, right? Or they are trying to benefit other people, right? But if those who are doing it just for praise, right, to show that they are better than everybody else, and then this is blameworthy, and if Allah wants to, He may punish, right, them.
How about those things that you teach, for example, your children, and then you end up not doing it, but you know this is the way.
Yes.
And then, but you, for example, simple example is like wearing slippers in the toilet. Right? You teach them to do it, and you try and enforce, but you go inside the toilet now. For example.
Yeah lah. So
what's that? Is that like the second group of people?
So that one it falls under a person taking the sunnah lightly.
Oh, this you're talking about. This one is wajib.
Wajib means dosa lah.
Yang wajib you ajar,
like
but
you
don't
say,
do. For example,
say
you pray, but then
you don't pray.
you don't pray.
Haram lah.
So on you is, are you considered the second group people? Like where
You can, depending on your niat, or depending on how you see it. So that means if you're doing it just to show, I'm also someone who pray, but then you're a hypocrite. You actually do it yourself. I think Imam Hadith says that if you don't act on your knowledge, teach it so that you feel guilty, so you'll do it. So if your niat is, okay, I'm teaching this because I know I don't do it, and I want to force myself to do it. So therefore, I'm teaching it to myself, make myself feel guilty about it, so that eventually one day I'll do it. If that's your intention, then it's all good, and Allah may reward you if He wants to. But I can't say that Allah will reward or whether He will punish or not. But it does boil down to your intention. So if you're doing it to do it just because you don't want people to say, hey, how come this one never pray? How come she doesn't do, or what? So you just pretend in front of people. Right? But behind their backs you do something else, you're lazy or this or that. Right? And that one is a hypocrisy. This is a form of hypocrisy, and if a person sees herself in that state, that's a red light. It's a red flag. Red flag on, these are red flags. It's a red flag on the person. They're not able to handle it. Okay. Alright. So it says here, so the third category are the unfortunate and wretched ones. They do not narrate, have no intelligence, and they are not custodians of knowledge. They do not memorize, nor do they understand. They have neither accepted nor paid any heed to the guidance of Allah. Rather, they have turned away from it. They turned away completely from it. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala said, there are various lessons to learn from this hadith, presenting parables, the virtues of knowledge and teaching, intense encouragement towards acquiring knowledge and teaching it, and the reprehensibility of turning away from knowledge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Right. So this is one of the very interesting hadiths. Alright. The next hadith is quite long. Let me just read it lah. But I'll do it again next time now. That's what I like. I like all the parable hadiths. They're so interesting.
Very interesting,
Yeah. We used to already learn them in Darul Zahra.
Where's the one? Yeah. The ring.
Yeah. The next one is about a ship. Alright, to show the parable of those who don't nahi anil munkar. So I love this hadith, the one about the ship. See, he's already, Rasulullah is very good at giving parables. Very good. Because then people who say, no, we don't want to nahi anil munkar. People want to do what they want to do. We shouldn't be stopping them from doing what they want to do. Then the parable comes. It's like being in a ship, right? And the people below tell the people above that we want water. And people above don't listen to them. Then what do? At the bottom of the ship, they dig a hole to get water. And because they do that, everybody drowns. That's the parable. It's a very hard parable. It's a very, you see here the hadith there? It's a very mashallah hadith. It's like hadith studies, mashallah. It's like gem after gem after gem after gem after gem through hadith. روى البخاري ومسلم عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. It's wrong hadith. Next one, hadith 58. روى البخاري والترمذي عن نعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم مثل القائم على حدود الله والواقع فيها والمدهن فيها مثل قوم استهموا سفينة فصار بعضهم في أسفلها وصار بعضهم في أعلاها وكان الذي في أسفلها يمرون بالماء على الذين في أعلاها فتأذوا به فأخذ فأسا فجعل ينقر أسفل السفينة فأتوه فقالوا ما لك قال تأذيتم بي ولا بد لي من الماء فإن أخذوا على يده أنجوه ونجوا أنفسهم وإن تركوه أهلكوا أنفسهم. Right. Bukhari and Tirmidhi narrate on the authority of Nu'man bin Bashir radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, Rasulullah said, the similitude of the one who remains steadfast on the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the one who transgresses them and the one who falls short in fulfilling them is like a group of people who were passengers on a ship, some of them on the lower deck and others on the upper deck. And those who on the lower deck had to pass by those who were on the upper deck in order to obtain water. Those on the upper deck became annoyed by this. One of those on the lower deck therefore took an axe and began making a hole in the lower deck. Those who were on the upper deck came to him and asked him, "What's wrong with you? What are you doing?" And he replied, "You became annoyed at me and I need water. If they stop him from making this hole in the ship, they will save him and themselves as well. But if they leave him to make the hole in the ship, they will destroy him and destroy themselves as well." This is the hadith on Nahi al Munkar. So some of them are practicing, some are not practicing. The ones who are not practicing, they need you to actually help them, and guide them, and lead them on the path. But if you keep getting annoyed, and I want to do my own ibadah, don't bother me. They will start going out there and do all kinds of things by themselves because they don't have knowledge. But those of knowledge are annoyed by them, in not helping them, and they will go out there and they will do whatever they want to do, and then they will destroy themselves, and that will create corruption in society, which will eventually come back to the ones with knowledge, and then their children will be affected because the corruption of people whom before they didn't stop them from their corruption. That is the parable here. And mashallah, the parable is so mashallah. Let's read through and finish the chapter. Those who attempted to make a hole in the ship is like those who transgress the limits of Allah set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there were those who either stopped them or those who remained silent. See that? The danger of being silent on Nahi Anil Munkar. Those who stop them are likened to those who are steadfast in observing the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those who remain silent are those who are falling short in fulfilling the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You allow it to be. The essence of the hadith is that salvation can be attained by those who uphold the limits and those who they are upheld for. Otherwise, both will be destroyed, the sinner because of his sin, and the one who remains silent because he was pleased with the sin being committed. It's a very hard hadith. Pleased or just indifferent. Being indifferent to sin is in of itself a sin. The hadith shows that punishment is applicable when commanding of good is abandoned. It also teaches that a learned person may explain by using examples. We also learn that it is incumbent to exercise patience over the taunts of one's neighbor, if one fears that he will fall into something more destructive and harmful. So of course in this hadith, so other lessons in the hadith is that, if people are bothering you, to be patient on it. Don't show annoyance, because otherwise if you show annoyance, you will be distancing them, and when distancing them, they will do even more harmful things against you or against your community. In the last hadith, let's read through it, whereby Rawana an-Nasa'i عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنه أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: مثل المنافق كمثل الشاة العائرة بين الغنمين تعير في هذه المرة وفي هذه مرة لا تدري أيها تتبع. So Ibn Umar says that a hypocrite, or Rasulullah said that a hypocrite is like a wavering sheep between two flocks. It wavers between this flock at times and between that flock at times, not knowing which of the two he should follow. So the one there's no ground lah. And eventually this sheep will be easy prey for shaitan, because it's not following a particular flock. Munafiq. And there sometimes you use examples that the Arabs at the time they know about sheep, about water, about rain, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself also does use parables in accordance with what the people at the time they know about. So the munafiq is the one that is like a lost sheep. You're not following this flock nor that flock, but you're just going between them, and you don't really have a standing. And this kind of lost sheep, when the wolf comes, it gets eaten very quickly. It gets attacked by the wolf very quickly. That's the last hadith of the chapter. Then we have a drawing on the ground and sand, which mashallah shows the importance of drawing. when you teach? Imagery. Imagery is very important when it comes to teaching. Right, alhamdulillah. Let's stop there lah. Alhamdulillah. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. الفاتحة أن الله يرزقنا علما نافعا وخيرا يستعمل ودلالا إلى الهدى وسلم وسلم إلى الرحمة علمنا ومشايخنا وزبق علينا وإلى أحد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والحمد لله رب العالمين.